It's been interesting to see the public freak out by people on the right over Democrats electing Zohran in New York as mayor. It's almost as if they've already forgotten the fact that these are the same people, the voters for Zohran, that celebrated Luigi sneaking up and killing a CEO in the most cowardice way you can imagine. It seems like they've already forgotten that these are the same people, these voters for Zohran, that celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk. It seems to be these are the very same people that have forgotten that the citizens of New York downplayed a woman being burned alive in a New York subway, which is, if you're looking at your screen, that's the story that I'm highlighting, just to remind you who and what these people are. And so the fact that Zohran won the mayoralship in New York in, an already blue state that has celebrated murder, that has downplayed people being burnt alive by Guatemalan men that were deported in 2018. It just really seems like people don't still get where the Democrat Party and their voters stand, which is for utter chaos and destruction, even if it means their own destruction. I mean, again, not too long ago, there was a number of stories that went viral about how women, particularly liberal white women, that were walking the streets of New York and getting sucker punched. And then they would go on TikTok and complain about how they got hit, and of course conveniently leave out the physical description of the people or of the men that assaulted them. We found out eventually that, it was some black dude that did it in this instance, another black dude that did it in that other instance. But you know what gets huge reactions of moral outrage? The Daniel Penny situation. New Yorkers reacted with more outrage over a so-called white man defending himself and defending a diverse group of passengers on a subway train. They had more angry outrage at Daniel Penny than they did at the death of a woman that got burned alive by a man who shouldn't even have been in this country. Instead, they elect an immigrant who's been in this country for less than 10 years, who in his victory speech praised a bunch of immigrants. Like the ones that will mosey onto a subway and burn a woman alive as she sleeps. Now, the picture that I posted here on this video is the image of the woman when she was younger. She was burned alive, murdered at 57 years old. But again, it's just another case of, it was a white person that got burned alive. So we're not going to pay it as much attention if that Guatemalan man burned a black woman alive while she was sleeping, or someone of some other so-called POC race. That's why the idiot liberal whites that celebrate and vote for these, immigrants and POCs that openly hate them, it's why that I've come to the conclusion that white liberals are the dumbest demographic of voters, even dumber than Negroes, who I always talk about. Because at least with Negroes, you can say the facade is that they care about so-called black people, because they push causes like Black Lives Matter and black this, black that. But when it comes to white, you had some chick, Jennifer Welch, I think her name was, openly talk shit about white people after Zohran won. And before Zohran won, Zohran was talking shit about white people and talking about this POC alliance. So the fact that any white person would vote for someone like that just shows you how utterly retarded they are. Like obliviously suicidal. Because I guarantee you they will act shocked if more anti-white laws get passed while he's mayor. It's like that black woman who was shocked that no one had her back over the tranny situation with the man pretending to be a woman in the female locker room. It's like, what do you expect? That's what you voted for. That's what you supported. I saw there's news of an explosion in the Bronx. People were saying, oh, welcome to Zohran land. But the fact of the matter is the chaos and destruction that has been going on in New York for decades now, especially since post-Mayor Giuliani. And none of these people have cared. Instead, they just want to upset conservatives and blame Republicans, even though they've had rulership over that state for decades now. And again, a lot of these people are so retarded, they vote for Zohran just so they can say, oh, we pissed off Trump. We got him. We pissed off Republicans and conservatives. We got them. As if they're not going to suffer the brunt of the consequences. Like, utterly fucking retarded. That's why, again, I say it should be illegal for liberals to vote. Or at the very least, they should be forced to live in the conditions and situations they helped create it. I think it's a crime that a bunch of Californians and New Yorkers have been allowed to leave their states to move to other states, so-called red states. Because all they do is go and spread their cancer. They ruin one region, spread out to move, to go and ruin another region. That's what these people do. That's why I said it can't be no coexistence with them. And we're beyond voting to resolve the issues that we have. And as I've always said, at the very least, people should be weaponizing their wallets, financially punishing liberal institutions and ideologies that get pushed. And that's why my main thing has always been boycott Hollywood. Start there. It's the easiest institution to have die due to people weaponizing their wallets and no longer financially supporting them because they promote the Zohrans of the world, as we've seen with, of course, celebrities celebrating him. But again, they're all traitors. They're all treasonous traitors that shouldn't even be allowed freedom in America, let alone be able to work and thrive playing make-believe. But, again, this is what you get when you have a soft opposition. The opposition to the left, to liberals, to the Democrat Party, the so-called right, even the self-proclaimed based people online, they're cotton soft. Cotton soft. Because they'll never do anything about it but complain. They don't even financially punish these people. Because some of the so-called most based people online still are consumers of mainstream media entertainment products. If it's not through movies, television shows, it's through video games and sports ball. Especially with the betting thing that's been injected to it. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous to see the freakout over a Zohran winning in a blue state. Even the Virginia and I think New Jersey races, again, blue states. Of course they won. And then, of course, they would vote for the likes of a Zohran because, as I stated before, these are the same people that celebrate murdering the political opposition. And they just downplay murder in general of innocent people by criminals that don't fit the narrative. The narrative of, white supremacy. So if it's a POC criminal, they essentially are okay with it. And we've seen it even when liberals have their own loved ones murdered, where they apologize. I don't want it to be racially divisive. I remember talking about that story where that woman literally made her dead brother forgive his killer through AI by having an AI video made of her brother forgiving his murderer in the courtroom to essentially help the killer of her brother get off, or try to. Like, that's the state of liberals. So if they're willing to sacrifice their own and themselves, why in the fuck would you think they would give two shits about you, or let alone this country, by electing a communist jihadist? Liberals have been wanting to be like Europe for decades when it comes to sexual liberalism, where pedos have found a safe haven in Europe, like Roman Polanski, for decades. And another thing that Europe is doing is allowing jihadists to run their cities. And we're seeing what that's bringing about. But anyway, that's all I have to say about this.